In a stunning announcement, Trump took to Truth Social with a message that raises even higher the prospect of a protracted war in the Middle East. He wrote, quote, "If Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump." So let's briefly go through Donald Trump's messages regarding Iran just over the last 72 hours. On Friday afternoon, he said this.
Pompeo is calling for a ceasefire in the Middle East and to reopen dialogue. What do you say to Pope?
Well, look, we can have dialogue, but I don't want to do a ceasefire. You know, you don't do a ceasefire when you're literally obliterating the other side. They don't have a Navy. They don't have an Air Force. They don't have any equipment. They don't have any spotters. They don't have anti-aircraft. They don't have radar. And their leaders have all been killed at every level. We're not looking to do that.
Quote, "I don't want to do a ceasefire." That was followed up by this claim.
The Strait of Hormuz is a simple military maneuver.
Very simple.
Yeah, but what did you mean by that?
It's a simple military maneuver. It's relatively safe, but you need a lot of help in the sense of you need ships, you need volume. And NATO could help us, but they so far haven't had the courage to do so. And others could help us, but, you know, we don't use it. You know, at a certain point, it'll open itself at a certain point. But we've defeated the enemy, and they are an enemy. They're a sick group of people. The leadership is gone. The Navy is gone. The Air Force is gone. The anti-aircraft equipment that they have, the radar they have is all gone. Everything's gone. The strait itself, the actual strait, how are you? The strait itself is, we're doing a good job. But it would be nice if the countries, including China, if the countries that use it, China uses it 90% of their energy. Japan is 95% of the energy. It would be nice if those countries would get involved.
Quote, "At a certain point, the Strait of Hormuz will open itself." And then he explains how Iran is all but defeated already. Next, Axios reported that the Trump administration is preparing for peace talks. Quote, "After 3 weeks of war, the Trump administration has begun initial discussions on the next phase and what peace talks with Iran might look like, according to a U.S. official and a source with knowledge." And now, on the heels of purported peace talks, Trump threatens to, quote, "hit and obliterate power plants, starting with the biggest one first," which is strange because if we're winning and on the verge of peace talks, why do we suddenly need to lob unhinged threats about bombing power plants? All of which is to say, I'm starting to think that maybe, just maybe, Trump might not actually have a plan and is just flying by the seat of his pants here. And aside from the fact that Donald Trump is showing his entire ass in terms of having no plan, the plan that he did put forward would also be a disaster. First of all, attacking civilian targets like power plants would amount to war crimes, unless, of course, he isolated any potential attack to a power grid that expressly and specifically serves the Iranian military, but something tells me that Donald Trump doesn't have a plan to be that judicious. Second of all, if Iran's power grid is attacked, then guess what Iran is going to do? Retaliate against its neighbors, or even us and our power grids, which means the entire region, maybe the entire world, is at heightened risk, which is a guarantee that global trade will be even more effective, which means prices will rise even more than they are right now. And finally, from a strategic standpoint, why would Iran reopen its strait? It's its only leverage point. If Iran closes the strait, what does it have left? In other words, they're not going to voluntarily surrender their only leverage to the country that they are engaged in a war with. It just wouldn't make sense strategically. And in fact, with that in mind, Iran's leadership is literally fighting for its survival. They're going to use everything they have at their disposal, which includes mining the strait and keeping it closed, because they know that if they lose, they will be removed from power or even killed. So the stakes are clearly high for them, and they're obviously not going to willingly relent just because Donald Trump is posting an all-caps tweet. And look, the reality is that most of this is obvious and predictable, which underscores the fact that Trump doesn't have and never had a plan here. He thought that this would be easy, and so he just jumped in head first, ignoring all the historical precedent and warnings from people on both sides of the aisle. And lo and behold, he is learning, apparently in real time, that perhaps toppling the Iranian regime isn't quite as easy as he anticipated, as we now find ourselves involved in a protracted war, as we watch oil and gas prices surge, as we watch our tax dollars go to bombing other countries, as Americans remain unable to afford life right here at home. I spoke with Pod Save America's Dan Pfeiffer and Tommy Vitor in separate interviews about that exact point. Here's what they both had to say.
If you want to try to play armchair psychologist, I think it would go something like this. After Venezuela, he thought the United States could do this on the cheap, quick and easy. It would be fast. And I think somewhere in the back of his mind, he has this image of, like, as he thinks about his legacy, he's not thinking about what helps keep Mike Johnson speaker or keep John Thune majority leader. He thinks about what gets Donald Trump etched into, Mount Rushmore or whatever else. And I think he has this vision where it's in his head where it's like, I did regime change in Venezuela. I do regime change in Iran. I do regime change in Cuba. And the last two, he believes, are historically important because they have been long-term problems and long-term adversaries in the United States. And he didn't think it through. And he's not the first person to think that regime change in Iran is a good idea. People have been talking about this, thinking about it, planning it, the possibility of a war with Iran since 1979. And the reason why no one has done it is the consequences are tremendous because of this type of regime that Iran has, how big a country it is, and most notably the Strait of Hormuz. They have this leverage point over the rest of the world that is very hard to unstick. And so he kind of stumbled ass backwards into it.
I think the reason he started the war is because, last June, there was the Midnight Hammer operation where they bombed a couple of Iran's nuclear sites. No one was hurt. Right. Everyone told him he was an amazing, tough, historic figure, right? Then there was the Venezuela operation earlier this year where special forces were able to swoop in, capture Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, yank him out, install the vice president, and now Trump feels like he's running Venezuela as this vassal state. So he has decided that he has almost godlike powers via the U.S. military, especially special forces, that there's no cost, there is no downside, that he can do literally whatever he wants. And he had lunatics like Lindsey fucking Graham talk him into this war and say, sir, if you take out Maduro and the Ayatollahs in Iran and the Cuban government is next, you're the greatest president in history. And that was just an insane thing to argue, given what we know about Iran and the capability of their military and how they would fight. And also, I mean, just to talk about the communications piece of this a bit, normally Donald Trump is an excellent communicator. Like, we don't like him. He's crazy, but he is able to drive a narrative, control the media, right? Like, get people to talk about what he wants to talk about. He has utterly failed to do that on Iran. Like, he never gave a major speech explaining his rationale. He's doing like random little toppers about Iran. At the same time, he's like welcoming the MLS soccer team champion to the White House, right? Like, he just looks like
he's still golfing on the weekends.
Yeah, he's golfing on the weekends. Like, reporters are like drunk dialing him, and he's doing like 40 mini interviews where he's saying different things. So like, he has created a lot of the communications problems that have fed into the political problems behind the war itself.
To watch the full interviews with both Dan and Tommy, check out my channel and please make sure to subscribe. It is 100% free, but a great way to support my work and independent media. But the dangerous part for Trump is that it's not just the fact that he's lost control of the issue right in front of him. It's that even if he wanted to use an escape hatch tomorrow, it's too late to neatly wrap this up. The conflict itself is expanding to other neighboring countries. Infrastructure is being destroyed that can't easily be replaced. Again, the Strait of Hormuz being closed has created a choke point that is going to take time to recover from. Global supply chains are now impacted. So even if everything was all kumbaya come tomorrow, we'd feel the impacts of this for months into the future at least, which means our costs will rise, inflation will continue to surge, oil prices will increase. And the White House will have to continue to contend with reports like this.
I'm really, really not happy about this inflation report.
All right.
And I know it's one data point. The Fed looks through it. We try to look at 2 or 3 month trends. But this does not look good to me. And I don't like sitting here after everything we're talking about and saying, oh, well, okay, but it's just 1 month. Because unfortunately, March is guaranteed 95% chance to get worse than what we saw.
And this means higher gas prices for Americans. As you mentioned, the national average today, $3.72. Wolf, I remember speaking to you from a gas station in New Jersey just on Friday when the national average was $3.63. And just look at where it's come from a month ago, up over 72 cents. If you look at diesel, though, diesel fuel, that's seeing an even higher spike and a faster spike in prices, up $1.24 from when the war started just a few weeks ago. Diesel prices reaching almost $5 a gallon. And that is critical for actually a lot of drivers that I spoke to in New Jersey who say they use their trucks for their personal work vehicles. And think about all the major trucking lines that use diesel fuel. That is going to have a trickle-down effect to everyday items for Americans. Think about all the food, the perishable food that comes in on truck. You're talking about dairy, meat, produce, things that have to come in regularly. Shipping for everyday products from Amazon, from Macy's, Barnes & Noble, wherever you may be ordering something, that's coming in on a truck. So those costs going up, of course, fuel at the pump and jet fuel, which is why some economists are suggesting that airfares could rise in the next couple weeks to months. Also worth noting, where are things going right now? How high could this go? Well, according to Patrick DeHaan at Gas Buddy this morning, telling me that gas prices this week alone could rise up to another 10 cents. And there's that diesel, critical for shipping companies, rising maybe 5 to 10 cents this week alone.
Near-term measures of inflation expectations have risen in recent weeks, likely reflecting the substantial rise in oil prices caused by the supply disruptions in the Middle East.
And remember, all of this was completely avoidable. This didn't have to happen. But Trump wanted to play kingmaker, and here we are, which would be bad enough unto itself. But now worse, considering this is a party that swore up and down it would keep us out of wars, keep gas prices low, and make sure that life was affordable. All apparent lies, and they all line up to grovel at Trump's feet as he plunges the U.S. deeper into this conflict. Because at the end of the day, as far as MAGA is concerned, it was never about Americans and always about Trump. Before you go, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more and support independent media, please subscribe to this channel. The subscribe button will be right here on the screen. But second, the reality is that we are now in a political environment where this administration can lean on any of the social media platforms to suppress certain voices if they don't like critical coverage. That means my longevity here is in the hands of a few tech billionaires who are already making it clear that they are willing to cater to this administration. To that end, signing up for my newsletter is a way for me to reach you directly if that ever becomes necessary. I'll put the link right here on the screen as well, so please sign up. It's free, but there's also an option to do a paid subscription if you'd like to support me and my team. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching.